Today we are going to see how to deploy a PostGIS environment in your local development machine. So we are going to use Docker. It's available for almost every operating system. I'll be using the Windows Linux subsystem on Windows, so I have installed everything. I assume your environment is already ready to work with Docker. If not, leave me a comment and maybe I'll do a video about that. And let's start. We are going to deploy both PostGIS and PgAdmin4. And to do that, we are going to use a Linux shell. So open it up. I have created a directory called container, and I create another one called PostGIS. So let's go inside that. Okay, I'll be using Visual Studio Code as a IDE. So code dot, it's the command to open the remote directory on Visual Studio Code. And now we are gonna create a new file called Docker Compose YAML. Okay, perfect. Now let's take a look to what we are going to install. Here we have the official image for the container of PostGIS, and it actually includes a lot of things. Just go to the Docker registry and search for PostGIS and take a look to all this. We are gonna use Docker Compose so we can avoid to have a long command line in the shell, and it's easier for us to remember. So, and the other thing we are gonna install is the PgAdmin tool, which is actually really useful if you have to manage PostGIS in general and PostgreSQL containers in PostgreSQL instances in general. So let's start. And the Docker Compose file is a bit complex, but actually we are gonna use a version of 3.1, and we are gonna define some services. Let's start with the database, which is actually the PostGIS one. So let's take a look to the last version available, and it's actually the 15 with the 3.3 PostGIS. So let's use as image the PostGIS 15 3.3. Perfect. We wanna disable the restart, as this is a development environment, and a fundamental thing is to set a password. So the environment will contain PostgreSQL password. Let's put it password. Okay, we have done here. Let's take a look to the other things we can actually set. The Docker file. Okay, perfect. Okay, the documentation, take a look to the documentation and the official Postgre one, and take a look to all this, because the defaults are really not secure. Here also we are using the environment, and this is actually an old method, but it's simpler to explain in a tutorial. You should use Docker secrets, as it's as says here. You should define a secret and use a secret instead, or use at least an environmental file to have the password outside the Docker Compose file. itself. So, okay, this is the common setup, but we are gonna use a little bit more of that. And let's define some ports. I want to map the 543R because I have another instance, so I want to map it on another port. Okay, and then I want to define the volume to make data persistence. Let's call it data, and map it to var lib PostgreSQL data, which is actually where in the container data lives. And also I want to define a network. Let's call it GISnet. Let's add an alias to this using PostGIS15.docker. Okay, now we have to define the volumes. So I have defined data above, so I wanna put it in as a name of data PostGIS15 data. Okay, it's a name. Just put it whatever you want. And the other one is networks. Okay, let's define external network, GISnet, external, and let's name it GISnet. Okay, this is the basics. Okay, we have defined the Docker Compose file, so let's move to the console. Let's put Docker Compose up. Okay, it's creating the volume, it's pulling things. Let's wait a bit. Okay, I have a typo here. It's Postgres password, so let's fix and build. Okay, now it works. Perfect. Now we have a running database system. I'll put it down. Okay, now I have run PostGIS detached, so maybe we want to see Docker PS. We have actually the container running. If you are curious, we can use Docker Compose logs to have a hint about it, if it's working or not. Okay, this is the first step. Now we have a running PostgreSQL and the PostGIS one. So the next thing is I wanna have the PgAdmin installed to manage this. So Docker Compose down the moment. Let's stop it. Okay, and let's go back to the Docker Compose file here and add a new one called PgAdmin4. The image is the one find on the page. Actually, I don't remember, so I'm gonna get it. It's the dpage PgAdmin, but let's take a look to the documentation first. Okay, here we have a lot of information, actually a lot of environmental variables. So take a look and read the documentation to learn about those environmental variables. I have already prepared something here, so I'm gonna cut and paste a bit of speed, and let me explain what happened here. I have set a dpage PgAdmin4 as image, also nor start, so we are gonna manually start the whole compose file whenever we want and we need it, so it does not use resources on the background. Also, I defined some environmental variables, which they actually should be secrets. Here, this is the info@sample.org. A default email here, then a default password called password, not a really good one. Let's set config enhanced cookie protection and the log level to 10. Also, I'm gonna map the port 5480 into the 80 port, which is exposed from the controller, and actually we're gonna put it in the same network, and let's call it PgAdmin4 password. This is mandatory, otherwise it will never work. So save the file, let's back to the console, and let's this is, I have an error here, so let me fix it. Fire up. Okay. Now I'll have Docker Compose up, and it's actually pulling it. So it's creating things. Oh, perfect. I think we are almost okay. Let's wait a bit. And application initialization. So if we actually take the browser into this port, we are gonna I don't know what happened here. 80, okay. Now we have it running, so let's put info at example.org a password as password. So we are gonna log in. Great, we are now logged in. So add a new server as the first thing. The name is PostGIS15, and let's move to connection and use PostGIS 15 Docker. The port is the right one because I'll show you how in a moment. The username is Postgres. We have not created anything, so the password is password. Let's save the password and click save. Okay, we are connected, and let me add a bit of detail here. So this is an alias in this network that may be used inside other container of the Docker Compose file to access. The username we are using was this one, this set here, and the password was set here. Okay, and about the ports, we have here a mapping from the host to the container. But if we are gonna use the GIS net, so the network we have defined, we must use this side of the port, so the default one, 5432. So now everything is okay, PostGIS is installed, and we actually can connect to using QGIS and to manage everything. It's actually, this is perfect for working in a development environment, so don't worry about using it in a container. It's not the perfect strategy on a production machine, but during development this is not a problem. Thank you for listening. In the next episode I'll show you how to connect to PostGIS using QGIS. So have fun with the GIS.